Good afternoon, Billy HL here for a new video on Media Mementos, and today we're going to be talking about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It took a really long time to get to talking about the brand, but let's face it, Trevor has little to no experience with this aside from the 4Kids show, and I mean, when else are we going to talk about this thing, right? Unless I'm taking the helm, so there you go. So, as a kid, I loved the Ninja Turtles, and admittedly right now, I'm still a pretty big fan. I love the live-action films, minus the stupid third installment. I definitely really enjoy the 80s cartoon, and I'm also a huge fan of the 4Kids Foxbox cartoon, which has been debatably hailed as the best cartoon incarnation of the Turtles, next to the 2012 one, which I have hardly seen, so I can't really judge, I'm sorry. Being a big fan of the Turtles in the early 2000s, I was definitely at the right age to be excited for the brand new big screen adaptation of the time, TMNT 2007. Now this is at a time when film hype was becoming a new thing for me. You know, stuff like Spider-Man 3, Shrek the 3rd, Pirates of the Caribbean 3. Yeah, a lot of disappointments that year. But TMNT looked very promising. It had a very dark aesthetic, it had some really cool action scenes, and the character dynamics were on point. So naturally, as a kid, I was very much looking forward to this. I had gotten the toys, I had got the GameCube adaptation of the film. I was just anticipating like hell, and well, I ended up seeing it in the theaters as soon as it came out, and I very much enjoyed it. And to this day, I still think it holds up really well. The action scenes are well made, the stylization of the set pieces are incredible, even putting a lot of the best animated films of the time like Ratatouille to absolute shame, and just having a very mature theme that honestly really made me feel more like a mature moviegoer than a lot of other films at the time. It's a very solid film, and while I would like to talk about it in depth right here, there are plenty of other video essays and YouTube videos that you can watch yourself. These ones in particular that I don't remember the names of, but you can find them easily. They're pretty good insights in the whole matter, but that's not what I'm here to talk about today. As you can see in the title, this video is going to look more into how it works as a legacy sequel. Now, some of you might be thinking, what's a legacy sequel? Well, a legacy sequel is a follow-up to a feature film that hasn't had a new installment or any kind of concluding arc in a maximum of 10 years. Some not having a new installment in about 12 years, some not having a new installment in over 20 years, and some just outright not getting a new follow-up in about 30 plus years or so. Films like Blade Runner 2049 and Top Gun Maverick are definitely some really good examples of this, and those films were definitely very successful and very memorable endeavors, but I would hardly call them as poster children for how to really make a good legacy sequel work and stand the test of time and really stick with the viewer. Because a lot of those movies definitely rely a lot on nostalgia bait fan service or simply trying too hard to go, hey, here's the new generation, but here's the old veterans still lingering on to help guide the way. Thankfully, TMNT doesn't follow this trend. Instead of having a new line of mutants or bland human leads, they keep the Turtles as the stars and emphasize their dwindling relationship. Only Mikey and Donnie seem to have any kind of closeness left, while Leo and Raph are off doing their own line of vigilante work, with Leo finishing his training with Splinter, well, on his own. Splinter's still at the sewers, by the way. And Raph going out in the streets as the Night Watcher. Woo, edgy. What I appreciate is how they understand that a majority of the audience will be veteran fans who haven't seen the characters in a while, but also understand that newcomers like the younger crowd are wanting a good story with their favorite characters, or just a good excuse to see them on the big screen. Whether or not they had seen the original doesn't really matter, so long as the narrative can easily be enjoyed as a casual viewer. This setup is a great example of this, especially given that Shredder is dead, the Turtles are off doing their own thing, and there's a new evil that will inevitably cause the brothers to reunite for new butt-kicking adventures. Even April O'Neil and Casey Jones have definitely progressed and become official lovers. And yes, their banter is pretty amazing, I'm not gonna lie. That and at least Casey Jones actually gets to do some things in this film, you know, given that he was completely left out of the last two films, with 3 having him just simply be a plot device, and in the second one, he's just not even there at all. So it's actually good to actually see him in this movie. Also, unlike most legacy sequels, there's a fine line between nostalgia and progression. Yes, there are references and visual homages to the original live-action trilogy. It is clear the filmmakers wanted to create something new that can be enjoyed in multiple ways. Of course, you have to keep the interest of the older fans in some way. Hence, the visuals are taking notes from the original live-action film, with its grittier set design and experimental techniques. And because this is animated, they amp that like crazy. I mean, look at some of these. Look at this. Look at this. Look at that. Awesome. The urban atmosphere is easily one of the most noteworthy aspects of the feature, and I brought this up in my Rockadoodle video, but this is easily one of the few animated films to truly take advantage of a really, really good urban environment in a feature like this. Clearly showing respect not just to the original comics, but competent animated storytelling as well. This helps amp up the more dramatic tension between the main characters as a result, especially with the confrontation between Leo and Raph, one of the most shocking battles in any Turtles media. No matter who you are, as a casual or a veteran or hardcore, maybe you just don't even give a crap, this throws off anyone, and is designed in a way to not only show how much time has passed to lead to such a fight, but also present a new side of these characters that fans like myself had really never seen before, and, correct me if I'm wrong, hasn't really been explored again afterwards, unless it was just some kind of jokey exchange. It would have been so easy to simply repackage direct lines and themes from before and disguise them as a new narrative. Well, yes, it would have been really cool to see Shredder return one last time, or maybe even have a new take on the plot of Secret of the Ooze and having Baxter Stockman have a new formula that ends up creating Bebop and Rocksteady, but there's a greater risk of repetition and causing the previous films to really just lose their luster and just be seen as crappy remakes or bad homages. And as someone who even watched the original live-action films as a kid, I wasn't really on the edge of my seat waiting for any kind of follow-up or repeat plotline. I just wanted an exciting time with the characters. It didn't really matter what would be referenced or ignored or what characters were going to be in it. I mean, come on, don't you just want to see the Turtles in action? Well, alright, to be fair, the third one didn't really have any of the iconic villains either, so, maybe that argument doesn't hold too much water, but whatever. And admittedly, it is a little bit of a cop-out that we do have Karai finally having a visual depiction in a feature film of the Turtles, and really only being implied to have a greater role in potential future installments. And later on, they would actually have this twist that Shredder was actually alive and well the whole time, residing in Japan. Although I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself there. And speaking of the storylines and character implementations, that's where the divisive nature truly comes into play. The antagonist, Mr. Winters, voiced surprisingly by Patrick Stewart, one of the few celebrity voices in this whole film. While a decent enough character and is a really great twist hero at the end, his arc with the monsters and his brotherhood can seem a little bit something out of place for the Turtles, something more in line with the Legend of Zelda than the actual TMNT brand, which, it's ironic that I bring that up because the studio actually did have a Zelda pitch. However, I didn't really mind this so much because not only do we have a decent contrast to the brotherhood of the Turtles themselves with these soldiers essentially wanting nothing more than to backstab their brother, kind of like how Raph is sort of struggling with resenting his brother as this gruff, kind of stick-in-the-mud leader, even though Raph is the stick-in-the-mud of the group anyway, so, it's a little bit hypocritical if you ask me. I'm thinking about this too damn much, and also because, I love monsters, these are fucking cool designs, but also being quite the elaborate setup for implying the existence of Dimension X, which had never been acknowledged in the original trilogy, likely because of budgetary reasons. But because this is an animated film, they could go even crazier with the visuals and how many characters they can include without worrying about how much is it going to cost to create Krang and his mech. And that's exactly what they were going to try to do. Because this was a new installment of the original trilogy and would launch its own new line of movies, there was going to be a ton of new development and locations and characters thrown in, including more establishment of Karai's existence, again bringing Shredder back from the dead, who was not revealed not to be dead the whole time, and finally bringing in Dimension X for the final installment of this new trilogy. However, because of Viacom's purchase of the Ninja Turtles brand a year later, we never really got to see any of the other dimensions or character dynamics or arcs fully realized, and even more unfortunate, the first theatrical depiction of Krang and the Technodrome and everything with Dimension X we got was pretty underwhelming. Nonetheless, TMNT from 2007 is definitely an overlooked example of a properly handled legacy sequel, not too reliant on keeping old viewers engaged with needless callbacks, but also not ignoring said fans by only appealing to newcomers and thus alienating the entire audience. And this paid off. It was a very big success at the box office, grossing over $95 million against a $30 million budget, despite some mixed reviews and some polarizing responses from a lot of fans. But to this day, a lot of fans have gone on record to say this might just be the best film of the entire franchise, or one of the best at the very least. And I have to definitely agree with that sentiment, especially given that this really was the possible start of a trend in animated films that would become more mature and grounded and appeal somewhat to an older crowd, but more so just treating kids like equals rather than just treating them like fucking dumbasses. Yeah, I hate that age we're in now. Please, at the very least, let's hope to God that another film like TMNT can be released, because it's clear that with its monetary success, there is definitely a market out there. And as a kid, this shit was fucking awesome. So I know it worked for me. So yeah, that's the video. Yeah, okay. So I'll take this time to thank the Patreon producers: Lee Fraser, Valkyria, Whoop-Doo, Michaela Bellamy, MD the Dude, Blackjack, Nightingale Wednesday Nightmare, and Unkale. If you would also like your name read at the end of every video of ours, then please consider donating to the Patreon. There's a link down below. And now it's on to Comment of the Day! And this comment comes from The Ponder. I adore this movie. It's one of those I loved as a kid, and it only gets better as I revisit it as an adult. I've wanted to make my own video on this subject for a while, specifically the tension surrounding the human presence in the film, and I really like your point about the ambient, occasionally intimidating, oppressive atmosphere aesthetic to the whole thing. There's such a, quote, grown-up, emotionally grounded feeling to it, and its characters' story choices feel so deliberate and meaningful. Just a really strong movie. So bizarre to think that the sequels pivoted to such an opposite style so hard. Yeah, I 100% agree with you, especially with the whole idea of the human presence in the film. And I didn't bring this up in the video, but there is a little bit of a conflict between whether or not the global change or the rise of humans is the true threat to the animals in the film. Given, well, we know history. The mammoths were killed because of humans, and other animals were also killed because of the climate, and others just simply died because they had very faulty designs, like the saber-tooths. Also, Scrat's not God. Okay, I just wanted to say that.